Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So I wanted to update you all on my pure Spright deck because I've been working on it quite a bit and I have been updating it lately. So I took a list very similar to this, the last list that I showed off to the Workloads Championship Series about, was that like a week and a half ago-ish now? No, I think it's actually a week ago, a little over a week ago. Anyway, and I did decent during that tournament, but double elimination tournament, and I did end up losing twice, pretty close to the finals, but almost made it. In any case, alongside Workloads, she was co-hosting with, or I rather guess rather co-hosting with her was Ray Dye. And after I got knocked out of the tournament, I went into chat and mentioned that I was playing the post-ban list build with only one copy of Nimble Beaver, and Ray had a couple of suggestions about the build that I wanted to try out. He was talking about the Melffy package and pointed out that with Beaver at 1, it's actually not that bad if you open one of the Melffy cards, because then you can use the Catty search to search your one of Nimble Beaver. And I hadn't even considered that with Beaver going to 1, that the ability to search it off of the Melffy Catty would actually be a lot more important. It was easy, I think, for me to overlook because, you know, when Beaver was at 3, that interaction didn't really matter because it was often that you would open with a Nimble Beaver and then use the other two for the Sprind line, so you wouldn't even really have the opportunity a lot of the time unless you didn't open with Nimble Beaver. So yeah, I think that is definitely an interaction that warrants looking at. One other thing he suggested was maxing out on Sunfish, or in any case just adding another Nimble name, and I definitely agree with that, especially because actually, during the duel that I got knocked out in, it was, I don't know that it was necessarily because of this, but I had a game where I opened a Sunfish and a Beaver, and when you only play 2 Nimble Sunfish, that means you can't use Sprind to summon multiple bodies off of Angler. So, not only does having the extra Nimble Sunfish help with that issue, but in addition to that, having 3 of these is not bad for doing a Mosquito OTK. Basically, if you have Mosquito and Nimble Sunfish, and your opponent has a monster in attack mode and /or a monster with 2,000 or more attack points, that's an OTK right there. So, because the Nimble Sunfish, right, when it runs into the monster that's in attack mode, not only does it summon another copy of itself, but you do so by sending a fish from your deck to the graveyard. You can send Angler, and that will proc Angler to summon the 3rd Sunfish and the Beaver. So you get 4 attacks to run into after placing the hallucination counter. So your opponent, again, only needs to have a monster with at least 2,000 attack points to be able to inflict 8k in that situation. So, yeah, I decided to try that out. I don't think I had Fenrirs in the last build. No, wait, I did, didn't I? I don't remember, actually, but there was a minute where I thought I wasn't going to be able to fit Fenrirs, but I definitely really like having Fenrir in this deck. Not only generally speaking because it's a great card, but also because if you special summon this and have literally any level 2 monster, even like a Sunfish or a Dupe Frog, you can go into Sprind and then you have plays. So for that reason, you know, people, I always see this comment whenever I play pure Spright, you know, people are like, how it feels so bad to play stuff like Dupe Frog and Sunfish because they're bricks. And it's like, they're kind of not really, though, because they're level 2 monsters. And as long as a monster is level 2, right? Excuse me, sorry. As long as the monster is level 2, and you have that plus literally any other monster on the field, then you can make plays. Now, some people who favor like the Hero Kit engine might ask, well, okay, if that's the case, then why don't you like the Hero Kit package? I guess I will talk about that one specifically, because I don't remember if I have in a video yet or not, and I've had people ask about it. For those who are unfamiliar with the card, Hero Kid is a level 2 monster that, when special summoned, summons any number of copies of itself from the deck. So the idea is that you summon this off of the Gigantic, and then you get 3 copies of it, and that's really good. And the point that people make about, well, if you open it, you can just normal it, and then link it off with a Gishki monster, and a Spright monster, make Elf bring back Hero Kid, and then summon the other 2 from the deck. The thing is, though, like, I don't know, I'm not really a fan of this because it plays really hard into Nibiru, and that's honestly, to me, one of Sprite's biggest strengths in this particular meta is that Nibiru is still everywhere. It's not in Kashtira decks. Most Kashtira decks don't play it, but you can bet that pretty much every single other deck is playing it against Kashtira, and it's also just generally good, right? Pearly often packs multiple copies of this card, so I like playing around Nibiru in this meta. I feel like it's one of, again, I think it's one of this deck's strengths, the ability to play around it. So, and also too, like, you know, it is nice to summon it off a Gigantic and get multiple bodies, but at the same time, I often want to use a Gigantic search for the blue. If you don't open with blue, then it really pays to go ahead and get that line rolling with a Gigantic, because then you not only get the multiple bodies with Jet, but then Starter, and you might argue, well, okay, that's the same number of bodies that Hero Kid gets, but, you know, the Starter picks up a Red or a Carrot. That's a negate. That's a much more relevant body than just a vanilla level 2. And you also have the potential to pick up the Smashers as well for some more disruption if you don't want the extra body. So the difference, I think, between playing something like Hero Kid and 3 Nimble Sunfish is that the Nimble Sunfish has a lot of different functions that it can fulfill, right? Like, it's obviously mostly here to be sent off of Sprind, or sent off of the, or summoned off of the Angler that gets sent off the Sprind, which that's the other thing too, right? Like, Hero Kid, again, you have to kind of use in place of other pieces of your combo line, but the Nimble package just naturally weaves into your combo line. Same with the Melffys, it naturally weaves into the end of your combo line, which is why I prefer it over an engine like Hero Kid. I think there's also the Evil Hero... Yeah, Infernal Prodigy. I've considered playing this card before. It is a free level 2 body that, like, extends itself. You don't have to use your normal summon for it. But, I don't know, I just have never found the room for it. And then Deep Sea Diva. I think most of us are familiar with the card, but I'll go ahead and pull her up anyway. Deep Sea Diva kind of has, like, the opposite problem of Hero Kid, where she's only good if you normal summon her, so you have to draw her, and doesn't really do anything if pulled off of the Gigantic. So, yeah, I mean, those are the reasons why I still think the Frog and the Nimble package is the way to go, right? They're versatile, they're good if you open them, they can be used, rather, I guess, if you open them, and they're good off of the Gigantic. They naturally weave into your combo lines, and the same is true of the Melffy package as well. Oh, the other thing I wanted to address about the build is we are playing 3 Triple Tactics Talent as well as 3 Infinite Impermanence, and you might be wondering, well, Hex, why wouldn't you play Triple Tactics Thrust? Because you can use Thrust to search for either of those cards, and it would be a lot more flexible in that regard. The thing is, though, I actually want to... Here's the thing, right? Using Triple Tactics Thrust in that regard makes these cards more situationally good, right? Because if I'm thrusting for an Imperm, that's really only useful on turn 1, and similarly, thrusting for a Triple Tactics talent is only going to be useful on turn 2. I'd kind of rather just open the Triple Tactics talent and Imperm, particularly in a deck like this where my only targets are the talent and the Imperm, because literally all my other spell cards are quick play, right? So these are literally my only 2 thrust targets, and because of that, I'm like, why? I don't know. It's kind of one of those situations where, like, yeah, I could thrust for them, but I feel like they are less situationally good if I can just naturally open them instead. So that's why we're rocking 3 copies of each. This build performed very well when I tested it. I was in Diamond 2 when I started playing this build, and I immediately hit an 8-1, I guess that's not a win streak, but I had a 5-game win streak and then lost 1 and then won 3 more games to ultimately get into Master. So this was the deck I got into Master with. So 8-1 with this, and then with our pre-Kashtira build, but it was still a post-banless build. I think 19-9 was my final record with that before Kashtira came out. So if you combine those, that's what, 27-10 overall with pure Spright so far this season. All using the post-banless build with only 1 Beaver. It's not too shabby. I think this deck is still very good. So let's break it down card by card, and then we'll look at some gameplay. So we're playing 1 Dupe Frog, 1 Spright Frog, 1 Ronintoadin, 3 Nimble Sunfish, 3 Maxx, 2 Nimble Angler, 1 Nimble Beaver, 1 Melffy Catty, 2 Spright Blue, 1 Spright Jet, 2 Spright Red, 2 Spright Carrot, 1 Melffy Pinny, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. We have 2 Kashtira Fenrir, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 3 Triple Tactics Talent, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 2 Spright Starter, 1 Spright Gamma Burst, 1 Spright Smashers, and then 3 Infinite Impermanence, and that's going to be our main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Merry Melffys, 1 Melffy of the Forest, 1 Onibimaru Soul Sweeper, 2 Gigatic Spright, 1 number 2 Ninja Shadow Mosquito, 1 Downerd Magician, 1 Divine Arsenal, AA-ZEUS Sky Thunder, 1 IP Masquerena, 2 Spright Elf, 1 Spright Sprind, 1 Mekk-Knight Crusadia Maxx, and then 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. So that'll go ahead and do it for the list. Let's see some gameplay. Alright, so our first opponent is going to be on Kashtira, if you can believe that. Yeah. Let's go ahead and dive on into this duel here. Looks like we're going to end up taking the first turn, and we opened a very, very good opening hand here. We have the Swap Frog, we even have a water monster to potentially special it. Got the Melffy Catty, which, if you remember, as I mentioned in the actual profile itself, because we opened this, that's actually fine, because it means we can search Pinny with the AA-ZEUS monster, and then when we actually use Catty's effect, we'll go ahead and just search the Beaver. And we have a Red and the Smashers. Great hand, phenomenal hand for going first here. So I'm going to start by actually normal summoning the Swap Frog and sending the Ronin. Then I can special the Red and overlay them for the Gigantic here. Could have specialed it, but it's like, I think I'd rather just keep the card in hand, honestly. Might need an extra level 2 monster. You never know when you're going to need another level 2 monster playing this deck. So, Giganticing for the blue. Blue and Jet. Jet getting the starter there. Gonna use the blue and the Jet to make the Spright Elf. Activating the Elf effect to bring back the Swap Frog that will allow me to send the Dupe Frog from my deck to the graveyard. Now I can use Ronin to banish the Dupe Frog and summon itself, and then link the 2 of them specifically off for the Sprind. That way I not only put the Ronin back in the grave, but also another material for it. One really easy way to misplay in this deck that I do a lot if I'm not careful is by making an AA-ZEUS monster with either the Ronin or the Swap Frog, and then when one of them goes to the graveyard, you're not able to get that extra summon, and you end up losing out on that extra body. So I like to just use them both as link materials for the same summon. Very clean and easy, gets them both in the yard. And yeah, now we're using the Sprint to send the Angler, summoning a couple of Sunfish. I'm going to use one of my Sunfish and the Gigantic to set up the IP Masquerena here. Now I get to use my Ronintoadin's effect, banishing the Swap Frog and summoning itself for the, overlaying it with the Sunfish for the Melffy of the Forest. Now, we do have the Catty in the hand, but like I said, we can use the Melffy of the Forest to add Pinny, and then now when we use Catty during our opponent's turn, we can just go ahead and add the Beaver instead. So, this is a very, very solid turn 1 end board, and if you open Spright Red or Carrot as alongside either Swap Frog or Blue, then you can make this end board where we have the Elf pointing to the Sprind and the IP. The Sprind has a material to detach off the Melffy of the Forest. The Melffy of the Forest can potentially negate when we bounce with Catty. By the way, when we bounce with Catty, we can just use Elf to bring back Red, and then we'll have Red and Carrot, and then once we use one of those negates or the IP, we can just go ahead and make the Herald then. So, and we have a Smashers to boot, so good stuff. Alright, opponent's going to start with Ogre. I'm going to bounce the Catty and add the Beaver, but I'm not going to add the, I'm not going to summon the Herald just yet. Like I said, I'm actually going to bring back the Red first. And again, because we have the Melffy of the Forest on the field, we can not only negate the Ogre's effect, but also make it so it can't attack this turn. So, very, very good here. Opponent's going to throw down Descendant of Thunder. Looks like they're using some pre-Wave 2 support here. For the Dark Arm Dragon of Annihilation, I'm just going to use Sprind to bounce that back since I have the opportunity to. They're going to summon the Scareclaw Kashtira now by banishing the Ogre, and then normal summoning Psybeast, the Supreme Sea Mare of this deck. That'll make it level 7. I'm fine letting all this resolve, by the way, because I don't care about any of this. I'll let them activate the Dark Armed effect, but I will negate and destroy it with the Red by sending off the Melffy. And now that we have a zone open, in the same chain link, I can activate Pinny's effect. This will allow me to special it and then immediately go into the Herald by syncing it with the Catty. So again, we use one disruption and then we're immediately able to just go into the next one here, right? Summoning the Herald, negating the Dark Armed. That's going to get popped. Here's the Kashtira Birth. I'm just going to go ahead and negate and destroy that with the Carrot. And now our opponent only has 1 card left. We still have a Smashers, we still haven't used IP, we still have Herald. And that is going to be the end of this duel. And we also searched a Beaver for backup plays. Also, huge shout out to this opponent who, after I disrupted them after this, ran out the timer. We love opponents who run out the timer when they lose. Don't worry, you were absolutely reported for slow play. So that was a textbook turn 1 combo line and follow-up with this deck. And I think I can't show a greater example of like what a good turn 1 does. Now, of course, our opponent might not have been on an optimal Kashtira build, but I mean, you can't deny that even if they were, we still had far more than enough disruption to stop pretty much all, if not, you know, or most if not all, rather, Kashtira lines our opponent could have. Because again, even in that line right there, we hadn't used Smasher, we hadn't used IP, we hadn't used the Herald, and we still had the Beaver for follow-up plays. So, good stuff. Let's go ahead and check out this next game here. Alright, this next opponent's going to be on Flouanderies, which those of you who know me know that this is my least favorite deck to play against, and even if you don't know me, you could probably have guessed that relatively easily. And we're going second against it nevertheless. Yeah, Maxx and Nib typically do not do very much against this deck. Ugh, poor me, throwing out the Maxx during the draw phase, but alas, the unexplored wins confirms that this is not going to be a matchup where it's relevant. But, thankfully, they bricked, and they're playing Snow. I didn't even remember that until just now, but... Alright, so... They're gonna immediately Book of Moon the Fenrir, which unfortunately, even though I'm not on Kashtira, is gonna leave me out of plays. Like I mentioned during the deck profile, even if you open just like Sunfish and Fenrir, that's enough to have a full combo because that lets you go into a Sprind. Unless your opponent uses Book of Moon on the Fenrir, which again, I don't think was a bad play for them, but here, because we just happen to not have a Spright monster in hand, or not able to fully punish them for it. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go to main phase 2. I got a Sunfish, a Call By, a Crossout, a Nib, and a Dream. I try to make that sound like not a lot, but it's actually not going to be a lot since my opponent Feather Dusters. So, got a Sunfish, a Nib, and a Dream. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, Flu actually does play into Nib sometimes, or sometimes they just don't end up playing at all. Oh my god. Was this not the game where I nibbed them? I thought I had a game recently where I used the Nibiru against the Flouanderies, and I thought it was this one, but I guess not. Well, either way, we're going to go ahead and go for the Sprind here, and pray that it resolves, but... Oh, no, it does, okay. Oh, no, but it's the Angler that doesn't resolve, right, because our opponent has a Called By here. Now, this would, a lot of the time, result in me just having to move to battle phase, but we did top deck a level 2 monster, and we have a normal summon. So, like... You know, you might think like, oh, Hex, you got so lucky. You top decked the right card. But again, the right card in this situation was literally any level 2 monster. And again, that's just extremely often the case with this deck. You don't need to top a specific card often to actually make plays and win the duel. You just need to get any monster that's got 2 stars on it. Yeah, now we can... get the Gigantic for Blue, Blue for Jet, Jet for Gamma Burst, and I'm just going to move to battle phase. I was a little concerned about another Book of Moon here, but I decided to just go for it, and I was like, you know what, if they've got a Book of Moon, we'll deal with the repercussions in main phase 2 and try to set up some more disruption. But they didn't have that, so I won. Yay! Gotta love a game against Flu where they don't have plays. I honestly do feel a little bad, like I feel like I'm bullying Flu at this point, because like, come on, they've been hit so much. But it's always that balance. They are a deck that is pitiable, but at the same time, kind of not. But, you know, that's just my own 2 cents. I don't think, if you like Flouanderies, I don't think anything, you know, I'm not like, how dare you like Flouanderies? Like, it's totally fine. It's all just like preferences, right? So, anyway, we have another couple of duels to check out, so let's see the next one here. Alright, wanted to showcase this game against Pearly. Because I think Pearly is going to continue to be a very, very relevant deck. And I continue to think more and more each day that it is actually just the best deck of this meta. Even more so than Cash. Now, I don't think Kashtira is bad. I think Kashtira is maybe just slightly less powerful than Pearly is right now. But Pearly is definitely the more consistent of the 2 decks, and you absolutely cannot deny that. So... normal summoning the Angler, going for the Jet, and because we opened access to Blue, we can use the Gigantic to go for the Swap Frog. It's really important to be able to go for the Swap Frog, or we would be able to if it weren't for this Ash Blossom. Oh, that's right, that's this game. So our Gigantic is getting hit with the Ash Blossom, but this does present an opportunity to triple attack our opponent. Alright, let's see their hand. It's Pearl Lily, Triple Tactics Talent, Delicious Memory, and Triple Tactics Thrust. So I'm looking at this hand, right? And then I'm looking at my hand, and I see an Infinite Impermanence, and I immediately see a path to victory here. I'm going to, of course, continue making my plays with what I have on board plus the starter. Then I'm going to set my Imperm. I'm going to Imperm this Pearl Lily, and I'm just going to not activate monster effects at all during my opponent's turn. And if I can manage to do that, then the only thing we have to worry about is whatever card they rip off the top of their deck. I'm going to put back the Delicious Memory here because, again, I can just use the Imperm to handle the Pearl Lily. Alright, so we got disrupted, meaning our board's going to end up being pretty minimal, but we do at the very least have a starter here. Gonna go for the Elf, activate Elf effect to bring back the Angler, activate the starter. I'm gonna use that to get the Carrot here because my opponent did show a couple of powerful spell cards. And I'm gonna link those off for the Sprind. Now, we have not used the Sprind effect yet, obviously because we just summoned it, so we're gonna send the other Angler, grab a couple of Sunfish, and then link off our 2 Sunfish for the IP Masquerena. I like the versatility of the IP more than just going for the Melffy stuff here. Even though that would allow us to bounce with the Sprind, I think the IP is still better. So, setting Imperm and then passing. And like I said, as soon as this Pearl Lily hits the field, we're just rocking out the Imperm. Also interesting that we're now seeing Pearly's like usage rates at only 13%. That's even less than Labyrinth when like the big Welcome and the Lady Lab came out. That debuted at like 15%. But Pearly's only 13. That's really interesting. But alright, we're gonna, like I said, Imperm the Pearl Lily here. That'll not only stop the search, but stop the effect to Exceed Summon. But they ripped the Delicious Memory anyway. They ripped it anyway. At the very least, this means they discard the Thrust. And now that the Thrust is out of the equation, and I know I can just Elf for Carrot and use the Carrot to negate the talent, I'm totally fine to activate monster effects now. Opponent finds 2 more Delicious! Oh my god! I put back a Delicious and all 3 of them were in the top 4 cards of my opponent's deck. It's very lucky for them, but they're going to ultimately end up going for the Fuko here, battling into the Carrot. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't just use the IP on the Fuko right away, and why I allowed them to summon the Zeus. I thought they were going to summon a Downerd first, and I was planning on using the IP effect to go into a Goddess once they had used the Downerd. So, I guess they kind of figured the same thing and just dodged it by going straight into the Zeus, which was actually a very good move on their part. So they're going to use the Zeus effect, but I'm just going to chain the IP anyway, because Goddess is going to end up being immune to Zeus. This will mean that I lose my Elf, which is significant, so like obviously I did still end up... I don't know, I kind of misplayed here, but only if I had considered that my opponent was considering that, you know, I was going to wait for the Downerd, which I maybe should have. So I'm going to end up using Ash Blossom, not even Carrot, but Ash Blossom with a triple attack, and that's going to be it for my opponent. And yeah, for those who are wondering why the Goddess survived, it's because it is unaffected by Zeus, because Zeus does not target. Top decking another Ash Blossom. I would have loved to have gotten a level 2 monster just gone for lethal, but if I'm not going to get that, I think Ash Blossom is just about the next best thing to get, because I'm going to use it on the next Delicious Memory that my opponent is still top decking. They're still top decking this card. How are they still top decking Delicious Memories? But it's still not going to be enough. Even though my opponent is able to top deck that card every single time, it's not enough. I'm going to use a starter here. Opponent's going to chain Maxx, but that's completely fine because I can just summon blue. They'll get 1 draw. I'll move to battle phase, and unless they play Battle Fader or Gores, then we are going to be in the clear here. So boom, there's the Goddess, and then here is the blue for lethal. Whew. That game was a roller coaster of emotions. Oh my god. Whoo-wee. That was that was something. But we managed to ultimately come out on top. Let's go ahead and check out our last game here. Our last game is against Going Second Sword Soul. Continuing to see this trend of going second decks. So, oops, sorry, bumped my desk there. So I actually lost this coin flip, but they let me go first. So I thought I was going to be up against Mikanko. But, oh my god, look at this. Look at this turn 1 hand. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, opening Swap Fog a couple of times in this run was pretty lucky, but As I've stated a million times, we'll continue to state, you know, it could have been Swap Frog, it could have been Blue, it could have been Jet, it could have been Starter, but as long as you open like any one of those 4 cards, which you play a total of, what would that be, 6 copies of, I think, between them, then you can do like a full turn 1 combo, as we're going to see here. We're going to do that yet again here, using the Elf to bring back the Swap Frog and then dumping the Dupe. Now we get to bring back the Ronin by banishing the Dupe, and like I said before, just going to link them, not bother using them as overlay material so they don't get stuck under Nixies. I'm going to link them for a Sprind. Now Sprind dumps off the Angler. Angler F is going to grab the 2 Sunfish, linking off a Sunfish and a Spright, Gigatic Spright rather, for the IP Masquerena. Now we get to bring back the Ronin and use it with the remaining Nimble Sunfish for the Melffy of the Forest. We ultimately didn't even need the call by or the crossout here, but again, this is like, if I could cherry pick my own turn 1 hand, it would be very, very close to this. It would be very similar. So yeah, that's definitely not a board a lot of people want to see. That's almost a full board except for 2 spell trap cards. Opponent is going to start off with a Kaiju, so again, because I lost the coin flip and they let me go first, I figured my opponent was going to be on Mikanko. So they throw down this Kumungus, I'm like, okay, definitely a Mikanko here. So let me go ahead and activate the Catty, and not only that, but I'll also just use Elf to bring back the red now. But then they activated Kashtira Birth, and I remember thinking, okay, so it's a going second Kashtira list. I've heard about these. I'm going to use the Carrot here. I'll send off the Sprind to negate and destroy it. We can send a Sprind because our IP is gone, so we're not going to use it to make like Avermax. And then, again, in the same chain link, I'm going to activate the Melffy Pinny here to immediately replace that disruption that got used up with another one in the form of Herald of the Arclight. And in this case, it's even nice that we get to put it in the Elf zone, so it's not targetable. And then the Adhara shows up, and I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck is happening anymore. But I think given my opponent's username, Big Worm, which is a great name, I love my opponent's name, I should have figured it was probably Sword Soul. So I'm actually going to banish the Monk with the Smashers as soon as it comes down for this exact reason. I figured that my opponent probably had a Vishuda, which they do get to special anyway, and they normal a second Adhara. They're not even going for the Chi-Shao, which is actually good of them. They're going straight for the Draco Berserker, which will allow them to battle over the Herald, and then activate the effect, and then over the Elf. Thankfully, the Draco Berserker only battles twice and not every single monster, so I am left with something of a board here. Now we're linking the Draco Berserker off for the Monk again, and we're activating, well, the opponent's plan was to activate, I imagine, the Vishuda, and bounce probably the Kaiju, and then tribute over one of my monsters maybe, but no, I'm going to call by as soon as the Monk hits the field to make sure that Vishuda is not only banished, but also negated as well, because, yeah, they can use the Adhara to wheel the Vishuda back to their hand, but they're not going to be able to use the effect, as my opponent is now about to learn the hard way as they try to use it anyway. And after that, they ultimately end up conceding. So that was actually my rank up game into Master, was that duel against Big Worm. Remember, Big Worm is always watching. So, GG's opponent, GG's. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it. So those were 4 of my games from my Spright run into Master. I didn't show my one loss because it was just me going second against Kashtira with no disruption, and they did the full turn 1 combo, and as you can imagine, I had a very difficult time playing into that. So it wasn't a particularly interesting duel to play out. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for these games. Hope you all enjoyed them. Hope you fellow Spright enjoyers out there liked this one. And yeah, like I said, you know, the deck is still obviously, like, fine. It's not tier 1. I'm not going to, you know, try to claim that it is. But I could see a world where it's still, like, the bottom of tier 2. It's at least still tier 3. I don't even think it's rogue. I think this deck is tier 3 at the very least in terms of power level. But again, I suspect that if it were more explored and more people were playing it, it could potentially get up to lower tier 2. But we'll just have to see how that plays out. In any case, that's going to go ahead and do it, like I said, for the games. Let's just move now to our outro. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching it all the way to the very end. That means a whole lot to me, and it's also a fantastic way to support the channel. And if you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways besides YouTube, there are plenty of ways to do that. If you check out the description below, you'll find a bunch of links down there. One of them goes to my Patreon. You're actually seeing the names of everyone subscribed to the Patreon on the screen right now. So if you're interested in getting your name in the credits here at the end, if you want to see more daily Master Duel content, or if you're interested in one-on-one private coaching sessions, I offer all of that on Patreon. I also stream live on Twitch. Feel free to go ahead and click that link and follow and or subscribe there. I also have the Discord community, if you want to follow that link, where hundreds of duelists have already signed up. Free to join, and you can just come hang out, talk about the game, and chill in general. Final link that's going to be in the description is my Twitter. You can follow that if you want some more notifications of what's happening with the channel. So, all in all, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.